Access more.
There's no grace for this created scenario in the future. But I know you've experienced it. You just expressed it. There's grace for what you're walking through right this second. Mm-hmm. There was grace for the day where I was picking flowers for my dad's casket and shaving my mom's head the same day. He gave me strength to go through that. And here she was. She lost her health, her home in Costa Rica, her husband, and who was taking care of her? That surprise baby that God orchestrated and knew in her hardest season she would rely on.
Welcome to the Candace Cameron Bure podcast. We're here to share conversations about life's challenges, celebrations, and everything in between. Season 2 is about finding purpose. Come join us. Before we jump in, I want you to know Access More is the preferred place to listen to and watch my podcast. At accessmore.com, you can find other great faith-based podcasts on audio and video. Just go to accessmore.com. All right. Hi, welcome back. For some reason, I wanted to say howdy, folks. Please keep your arms inside the train and remain seated at all times. I'm going to do a Disneyland episode. That was a terrible opening, but we're having fun. We're making all kinds of jokes here before we started the show, so we're going to get serious now.
Yeah, this is a little more serious.
Heather, I would love for you to give us an overview of what we're going to talk about on today's show.
When I was thinking about this topic of fully occupying your God-given space, it was not outside of my awareness that a lot of my friends are in undesirable spaces that God's given them. Whether it's a hard diagnosis, whether it's a child that's sick, whether it's living in a place they don't want to live, isolated from community. And so I felt like we needed to discuss, how do we process when we've been given spaces that feel more like a prison, honestly?
Ooh, yeah.
Than a beautiful palace like Esther's. You know, although it was hard for Esther, she still lived in a beautiful place. So
yeah. Ooh, that's going to be a good topic, because I feel like that will be relatable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And hopefully helpful.
I hope so. I hope to encourage. Yeah. But before we get into it, I have a question I'm curious to know about you, Candace. What's your favorite book?
And I can't say the Bible.
You can't say the Bible. And I know fiction may not be your thing that you reach for all the time.
It isn't, because I feel like if I have the time to read, I want to learn something.
Yeah.
And my tune out enjoyment is television more than reading books. But I read all day long because I'm reading so many scripts a day.
But you did discover a new way to read, right?
The Audible?
Yeah.
So I do listen to books in my car. But I will have to say, even though I typically don't read fiction, I read through the Hunger Game trilogy.
Yes.
And I actually read through it quite quickly. I really, really enjoyed it. And then I found a book, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers.
That's
I feel
like second to the Bible, though.
I know. Everyone says that, but it's true. It's just one of those books that stuck with me when I read it, and it was so beautiful. And recently, a few years ago, I read a book that is historical fiction. Yeah. And I was like, oh, never read historical fiction. Like, this is my jam. I really like this. And that book was called Becoming Mrs. Lewis. Did you read it?
I was actually reading that while I wrote my book proposal for this book.
Oh, wow.
It was our 20th wedding anniversary trip, and I was reading it. I loved that book.
So historical fiction takes elements of history or historical figures, real people that lived. And in this case, it was C.S. Lewis and his wife.
Yeah.
But it's still fiction because what's in the book was about their relationship. And we don't know that any of these conversations actually happened or the details. So, but it is about two real people. And I enjoyed it so much.
It's really good. And she has another book called Once Upon a Wardrobe. That's another C.S. Lewis historical fiction.
Ooh, I know what I'm going to read next.
I really do love all of the ones you just said. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of very
Are you a big reader, though?
No, I wouldn't say big. My husband really is. He's read every single presidential biography.
Oh, wow.
like chronologically he read.
Wow.
Yeah. Over
years.
years.
I can name them all by memory, but I don't know.
Oh, that's impressive. That's a good skill.
That's my party trick.
But we really loved the Harry Potter books before we had kids even.
Okay.
I know that's not, we're not allowed to say that.
Can I just tell you that? I was that person. I didn't let my kids read Harry Potter.
Well,
I've never read Harry Potter.
No, fine.
I'm not judging you though. I have a different viewpoint now, but I didn't read them. I didn't let my kids read them. I've never seen any of the movies. And I was that person I was that mom in Christian school that I was like, we're not letting our kids read Harry Potter. So,
well, the last book when it came out, we were such big fans and it's a thick book. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have. Yeah.
My husband and I sat every night and we would read it at the same time, like page to page.
Wow. That takes watching movies together like to a whole new level. You're reading together.
That'll refine a marriage right there. That'll refine it. But I think there was a book I read recently that's a nonfiction book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. Have you heard of this book?
No.
It has sold millions and millions of copies. Oh. It's written by Viktor Frankl, and he was a psychiatrist who spent 3 years in Nazi concentration camp. And he decided at one point in his experience that instead of just succumbing to what was happening to him, he was going to take an objective view and decide he visualized himself at the end of this experience in a lecture hall, giving a presentation to people on the psychology of being in a concentration camp. So he no longer was subject to it. He was an outside observer of his experience.
Whoa. Yeah. That just tripped me out a bit. Okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't like, this is a horrible circumstance. We're talking about these spaces that sometimes feel like prisons or concentration camps. They're not what we want. They happen to us. He didn't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
But he says the only human freedom, everything that can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last human freedom is to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances.
It just Corrie Ten Boom comes to mind.
Totally.
So okay, great.
Yes.
Wow. I want to read this book.
Right. Like we can either decide that we are the victims of our circumstances, or we get to choose how we respond to them. And I know that we talked about how one of your strengths was positivity.
Yeah.
So is it really easy for you to choose a positive attitude in any circumstance, or is that like a struggle for you? What helps you? What helps you if you are struggling?
When I can't choose a positive, because I am inclined to be positive in most things and find the silver lining in it, find the lesson that I can learn and what the takeaway is. But sometimes some news just is devastating where you don't have a choice in the matter. You can't change the circumstance and you just have to rah yourself out or through the day. So what helps me is always going back to the Word of God. I mean, also encouragement from people, but that's always going to come from a source.
Like, do you feel like you can reach people when you're struggling? Are there people, you said you had your couple core friends and your husband, and you're open enough to say, I'm really struggling with this situation?
There are a few people in my life that I can do that with. But over the years, I've also been intentional about going to God first, because it's so easy to go to our friends or our family or whoever that person is, and they may have amazing godly wisdom or advice, but it's still not God himself. So I want to go to God first. And then if I still need whatever it is, just encouragement or prayer or any of those things, or just a listening ear to sit with, then I do have those people in my life that I trust. If you're a parent or someone with young kids in your life, you want your kids to be safe online, and you want them to have fun with the online games they play. That's why I'm excited to tell you about True Play Games, a brand new faith-based app for kids that includes animated shorts, digital comic books, and a bunch of different games, all made to invite children to experience God's truth. With True Play, kids have fun in a world of safe and original content. There are no ads, no chatting, and no extra purchases. Visit truplaygames.com to learn more about growing faith through play.
I would say that I am more inclined to see what's wrong than what's right in a lot of situations. Like I struggle to have a good attitude when I have a hard parenting day or when work gets stressful. Like it's hard for me to turn the crank, like my student said. Like I really struggle with that. And there have been seasons, after my dad's passing and my mom was living with us and going through her cancer treatment, that I didn't realize how broken I still was. I didn't realize that I was believing some things about God until I went to our family camp that we love so much that I shared about the talent show. But we were listening to a speaker and he was talking about Ruth and Naomi. I don't know if you remember, Naomi lost her husband and her sons, and one of those sons was Ruth's husband. And so she's in this hard place, in these hard circumstances. And she tells Ruth, just call me bitter, Mara.
Right. Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, who wants to be called bitter? Like, right? Yeah. Is that the legacy you want to leave? Right. Oh yeah, my grandma, she was so bitter, or, that's not a fun word. But the speaker defined and broke it down from a Tim Keller quote that said, worry is when we believe God's going to get it wrong. Like we're worrying, we're fearing that he's going to get it wrong. But bitterness is when we believe God got it wrong.
When he did get it wrong.
And something resonated so much in my soul places when that phrase, as I realized with my dad's passing and with my mom's sickness, that God got it wrong. It
wasn't supposed to happen.
He took my dad. He wasn't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And we know God's sovereign, like good Christian. We can think that, but we sometimes don't recognize core beliefs that are dictating our behavior and affecting us. And so thankfully I was there with friends who prayed with me and I just told them, I've realized this, and would you pray with me and help me confess it and let it go? And in that time of prayer, I just felt it.
Really?
Release.
Wow.
Yeah. Like uprooting the bitterness, and how they say bitterness rots the bones or whatever. I don't even know if that's the verse, but
you felt it leave your body.
I felt like I was sick before and then I was like better.
Yeah.
And I wasn't actually physically sick, but it felt better. And the next day I was in that same room where I heard the message and I was dancing with my boys, and he literally turned my morning into dancing, and it was such a gift.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us are walking around in these hard places and we're blaming God for the circumstances.
Yeah.
And he's the one who heals us in the circumstances. So are there any beliefs that you have ever recognized or things that you've believed about God that are kind of hard to admit and you had to work through them?
I have. And one of the easiest places for me to go to is my marriage. Yeah. And again, been married 26 years, and anyone that's been married 10 years, I mean, less than that, really. You just know that marriage is wonderful, but it's hard.
Yeah.
You're two people, you're two different people, and you're trying to figure out life together and be agreeable for the majority of it, or have to compromise for the majority of it so you can live together. And I've talked about the fact that over the years, we've had amazing years and we've had really hard years, like really hard years on the brink of divorce years. And in those times when I would just go for drives because I was crying, I was over it. And I felt like God got it wrong. It was just like, this can't be right. This can't be right. Why should we stay together, God? Even though there's no biblical reason because there are a few biblical reasons for divorce. But if there's not, that doesn't check the box. I'm like, what do you just want us to stay together just to stay together? But we're going to be two bitter Christians. Is that really representing you? Like you got this wrong somewhere. You forgot to put it in scripture.
Yeah.
You didn't tell us, or you told someone, but they didn't write it down.
Yeah.
And I just constantly have thought about that. And yet it felt, those times felt so dark.
Yeah.
And it's a hard process to go through. And that's why marriage is like a roller coaster, ups and downs, hills and valleys. But I can look back, and I'm so grateful, for the work that God did in our lives and through our marriage, which is really great. I'm glad we got through it and didn't, bail before we had that opportunity. And there were people in our lives, and our kids were a big reason.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
What did they do to help?
I think I shared a story last season. I'm not sure, but I don't know. You might have to go back and listen to it. I'm not going to go on that because it really dives we'll dive deep into marriage, but that's really a play. They were a part of the healing process, and really I'm really grateful for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And other people, just like my parents who have been married over 50 years. And I think I shared that both sets of my grandparents were married over 65 years. So I am grateful for really strong examples that I had in my life and still have currently, when it came to marriage. And my mom and dad, massive encouragers of we've been through it, we know, and you're not the only one.
Yeah.
So let's talk through it, and we're here, and we're all those things. And having gone through that, I am eager to help my friends or my family that I know are going through those, because now I feel comfortable to sit in that space with them because I know what it feels like, and I got through it. God got us through it. Yeah.
You didn't stay in that place forever. Yeah. And I love that you were able to wrestle with God. He can handle us asking those questions or saying, you got it wrong. It's not going to disrupt him. Just like David, he knew he'd been anointed as a child that he would be king. God chose him. Samuel went and said, oh, not that one. Nope, not that one. Gets all the way down to the youngest brother. The runt. And so he knows. He's in Psalm 23 when it says, you anointed my head with oil. That was you said, I'm going to be in this space, but right now I am fleeing for my life. Mm-hmm. And so that though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, death is following me. Mm-hmm. King Saul wants to kill me. He says, I'm going to fear no evil because you are with me. And we have that confidence to know that no matter where we go physically, his presence goes with us. Yeah. And I have this little phrase I will use with my boys, or even to remind myself that we're in a God sandwich.
A God sandwich.
A little God sandwich. That he goes before us, he comes behind us, but also because we have God's presence in us, we're just completely surrounded.
I love that.
Wherever we go. And I was thinking in the Bible of different places like David that feel like prisons. And I thought of literally Paul and Silas in prison. Mm-hmm. And as I was reading the scripture, it's not like some of the prisons we picture. This is probably pretty dark. They were shackled to the wall.
Right.
So I'm thinking they're not getting bathroom breaks.
Nope.
Pretty dirty.
And I think back then I heard that it's not like they were serving them even a meal a day. Their other friends had to bring in meals for them.
That's why I said visit the prisoner. Yep. And how did they respond? What was their response in that space? God bless them. Yeah. What they were doing what?
Singing, praising. Yeah.
That's how they occupied a prison cell. And I think it's because Paul had already experienced so much tragedy and hard things, and he'd experienced Jesus on the road to Damascus. He knew God outside of that space had the ability to do things. I don't think he knew that the walls would shake and that the prison would break free. But what I really noticed was when the walls came down and prisoners were free to go, he didn't run away right away. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
He could have.
Yep.
He could have been oh, look what God did. Let's go.
Yep.
But he stayed. Mm-hmm. And it mattered because he had an interaction with the guard.
Yep.
Who was about to take his own life because he's dude,
I messed up royally.
This is bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to
die for it. Might as well just do it myself.
And Paul's no, we're still here.
Yeah.
We haven't left. And so he shares the gospel with them, shares his testimony again. Not only does the guard believe in Jesus, he goes and tells his family. And then the authorities say that Paul is released, and he says, go in peace. And when I think of these spaces that feel like prisons, it's like, do we want to try to escape? Like try to work our way out of the hard circumstances? Or do we want to wait in them until God releases us and says, go in peace?
Yeah, I want the peace. I want the peace.
I want the peace. I think, knowing that God is with us wherever we go and knowing that we want to wait for peace, like you've talked about your marriage. Mm-hmm. And I know there were probably days, like you said, where you're like, this is too hard. How did you feel God's presence in that valley? Because there is a woman listening who's in that valley right now. Yeah.
I don't know what your summer plans are, but whether you're juggling kids' summer sports schedules or planning a cookout or hanging out with friends, I know that every long day is better when it starts with a restful night's sleep. We spend so much of our lives sleeping, I think it's worth it to wake up in soft, luxurious sheets. Boll and Branch sheets are silky soft, and no matter what color you choose, they look great. When I got mine, I noticed their quality right away. They just feel so much better than the others. I've had some itchy, stiff sheets before, and there is just no comparison with Boll and Branch. Boll and Branch signature sheets come in 10 versatile colors in all sizes, from twin up to California King. They're designed to feel incredible for all sleepers, and they fit the deepest mattresses. Have you ever tried to figure out which end of the sheet should go on the top or bottom of the mattress? Boll and Branch sheets are labeled with top and bottom tags, so making your bed is easier than ever. Best of all, Boll and Branch gives you a 30-night risk-free guarantee with free shipping and returns on all U.S. orders. Sleep better at night with Boll and Branch sheets. Get 15% off your first order when you use promo code Candace at bollandbranch.com. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND branch.com. Promo code Candace. Exclusions apply. See site for details. Yeah, some days it felt so hopeless. I thought this is never going to change. Mm-hmm. And I continue to pray, though. That's like a given to me. I have so much hope because just like Paul, I've seen God do the work in my life in other areas. So there's always hope.
Right.
So the prayers never stop. But I do admit that it has felt like God just wasn't ever going to choose to change this circumstance. But I think being faithful and doing what was right, we read that verse a few weeks ago, do what is true and right and dwell on these things. So sticking to what I knew was right, even if it didn't feel good and was painful. So sticking to praying for our relationship, asking God to work on me and to help me see clearly what I needed to change in myself within the marriage. And then also with the things that I could so easily point out about my husband that I'd like him to change. But it really comes, it comes down to two people in marriage, but it was just stayed on course praying for those things. And then God would give me little glimpses of hope throughout the way in a tangible way.
Yeah.
And I think that's all. It was just, was prayer and staying on course. And I think that a lot of us give up too easily.
Yeah.
And I know that some people haven't seen God's work in their life. But that's why testimonies are so powerful. That's why we are to share them and share our experiences and what God's done in his work. That's why Paul stayed back and told him about the guard, or told the guard about him. And that's what we're to do. So maybe I'm that voice today in your life saying, like, in this place of my life, which at that moment was my marriage, like God sustained me enough through it. And then showed himself through our marriage.
Yeah.
And there is hope out there.
Yeah. I think we sometimes think through, well, if it's hard today, what's it going to be like? I can't keep doing this for.
Oh, yeah. It's exhausting.
Yeah. There was a mentor in our church. She would say, there's no grace for your imagination. There's no grace for this created scenario in the future. But I know you've experienced it. You just expressed it. There's grace for what you're walking through right this second.
Mm-hmm.
There was grace for the day where I was picking flowers for my dad's casket and shaving my mom's head the same day. He gave me strength to go through that.
Yeah.
There was grace that sweet neighbor Pam, that my boys walked her dogs, she became a friend of my mom's, and they would walk the neighborhood together, and she would take my mom to appointments when I couldn't. And I was thinking about my mom, like I was that surprise baby.
Mm-hmm.
And here she was, she lost her health, her home in Costa Rica, her husband, and who was taking care of her? That surprise baby that God orchestrated and knew in her hardest season she would rely on. So we have to recognize there is grace that God is providing.
Yep.
And will provide. And we can trust in the things he's doing behind the scenes that we don't see and what he's working out that we may never see.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I know that's going to encourage someone listening and watching today. What do you think? Should we take a listener question?
I think I need to recover.
Need a little break?
Let's do a listener's question.
I'll do a question.
Yeah.
So this is from Bonnie. She wrote, I recently found your podcast and I love it. Well, thank you, Bonnie. I've already listened to all the episodes and I'm submitting a question as you said we could. I'm a Christian and a practicing Catholic. I lost my youngest child, Amelia, unexpectedly on December 1st, 2017 at the age of 11 to the flu. I have really struggled with my anger towards God, but yet I know I wouldn't be here today without him. So I guess my question is, how do I move past my anger over her death so I'm able to move forward in my relationship with God and finally and fully trust him again? The grief of child loss can be so overwhelming and isolating at times that it's hard to see the light. Oh, Bonnie, my heart breaks for you and I want to give you a hug. I don't know what it's like to lose a child and I really can't imagine. I don't know what I would do. I think my immediate offer is to think of someone who has had that experience that would know that how to grieve that type of loss. And I immediately thought of my friend Angie Smith, who lost a child, and she has a book called I Will Carry You. And Angie weaves her powerful story of losing her child with the biblical story of Lazarus to help those who mourn find grace and peace in that sacred dance of grief and joy. I also think that maybe reading Job could be a good reminder that we can have anger towards God, that we can complain to God, and God can handle all of it. And ultimately be reminded that God is sovereign of all things, and he does have a bigger, clearer picture of the overview of each and every one of our lives. And it's always things we can't see, but that it might be helpful to read those. Heather, what do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. And taking that to him, like you said, he can handle it. Even in a prayer, like the prayer I confessed, like I've been believing this, you got it wrong, or I'm angry. He can handle that and have that interchange with him. In that same message I heard about Ruth, I heard that when we suffer, there's two things we question about God: if he can and if he cares. It's like, if he can, why didn't he? And does he just not care? And I think we know throughout the Bible that he's powerful. He's creator. We know these things are true about him. He is capable. And as far as caring, I don't think we grasp as parents the depth of his love for our children beyond what we do. I mean, right. That's the most love I think we've ever experienced is for a child, but his love is even greater. And so it wasn't his desire either that we live in this broken world that suffering happens. And so I just think resting in that and rebuilding trust does take time. It's okay. It's okay. And there's grace even in that he can redeem that. And I love your idea of finding other people who can relate and work through that process with you. Yeah. Well, Bonnie, we hope that's helpful for you. Want to let all of you know that we do have something just for you for this podcast season. I mean, do you ever feel afraid that you're missing out on your purpose for life? Well, go to Candace.com for that free downloadable PDF with tools created to change how you think about your purpose. There's a link on the website where you can order Heather's new book, Right Where You Belong, and we'll have a link in all the show notes. Until next time, be grateful all day, every day. This has been a Candace Cameron Bure podcast, a production of Candy Rock Entertainment. Some of the products and services mentioned are paid promotions. Any advice should be confirmed with a qualified professional. Opinions and ideas are for entertainment purposes only and belong to Candy Rock Entertainment. All rights reserved.